Welcome to Your Childhood is Over. No, it's not. Where we discuss how people from a toxic or abusive childhood are likely to invite abuse back into their adult lives through a sinister hidden force called repetition compulsion. My name is Annette Hunter. I'm a medical doctor. These videos are my opinion based on my personal experience of being under the control of this force for many years. This channel is not a substitute for therapy. If you feel emotionally overwhelmed or you develop any thoughts of self-harm, please consult a qualified therapist or your doctor immediately. Thank you. Hello everyone, it's Annette again. Welcome back. I want to tell you why I feel I'm qualified to help you break free from the toxic, sinister, hidden force called repetition compulsion. It's because I know all about this force and how it impacted on my life, and I will show you how in this video. You see, I lived under the control of this force for many, many years. I made too many bad choices and too many bad decisions that got me into too many toxic and abusive situations. So I finally began to ask, what am I doing wrong? And this is when I was facing my second divorce, not my first divorce, but my second divorce. I didn't want to take the easy way out and blame my ex-husbands because I knew I had to be responsible for the breakups too. So I took myself off to a therapist, and I was lucky in that the therapist I chose because they were able to identify in an instant what I was doing wrong. Now, when I was young, I had dreams. I wanted to be married. And I really wanted to have a stable home with a loving partner. I wanted that more than anything. I cared about having a job and a career and earning my own money, but all I really wanted was to be in part of a happy home, something I didn't have as a child. I longed to belong in a happy home. I desperately wanted to feel I belonged somewhere. Like I wanted to feel I had stable roots somewhere. But that's not how my life turned out. So, can you imagine my absolute despair when I had to admit to myself that my second marriage was over? And this is in Holy Catholic Ireland, where one divorce is frowned upon. I don't even want to talk about how people view two divorces. I mean, they literally write you off. You do not exist. You are damaged goods. In fact, you need to be thrown in the nearest skip or trash. Anyway, so Holy Catholic Ireland, divorce is not tolerated at all, definitely not two. So as a result, I hid away for years after my second divorce. I was so ashamed of how my life had turned out. I was brokenhearted too, as I felt I didn't belong anywhere. I was floating around the world with no fixed home and no loving partner. And that's not how I wanted to end up. But in a strange way, I think, in a strange way, when I look at it now and I can see it with hindsight, I suppose to say, but in a strange way, I think this had to happen for me in order for me to break free from carrying my childhood in my adult life. I didn't know I was doing that, and I'll explain how I didn't know I was doing that, because you're probably doing that yourselves. Well, think about it. Okay, so I was carrying my childhood in my adult life. So when I got married twice, it's because I married what felt familiar to me. I went for what felt normal to me, but I wasn't choosing what was healthy for me. I made the wrong choices for me. I chose partners that were not able to love me in the way that I needed and wanted to be loved. So it was when I had to face a second divorce that I finally realised that I must be doing something wrong. And as I said at the start of the video, I was very lucky in that the therapist I went to knew about this force called repetition compulsion. So when I asked the therapist, what am I doing wrong? They were able to answer me two words that instantly changed my life for the better. And those two words were repetition compulsion. And I'll explain what they mean now, those words. So I started with like this: children learn what they live. So growing up in a toxic or emotionally neglectful environment, that shapes your subconscious. It means you're programmed to attach yourself to people who match the emotional patterns you grew up with. I grew up with a violent, critical father and an absent, conditionally loving mother. Now, please remember, I'm not here to bash my parents, and I explained in another video that both my parents had terrible abusive childhoods themselves, and they were not ever able to get access to therapy, so they were very damaged people. Anyway, back to me. Once I learned about repetition compulsion, everything changed. I learned that I was under the control of what I now call a toxic, sinister, hidden force. It's toxic and sinister as it compels you to recreate the abuse you suffered as a child. It's hidden as it is in the subconscious mind, which is somewhere up here, we don't know where it is. So, and then it's a force as it literally forces you to invite abuse or toxic situations, just like you had in your childhood, back into your adult life. So if we had abuse as a child, abuse becomes our normal. While we don't like the abuse, sadly it is what we are familiar with, and we will always gravitate towards what we are familiar with. We are programmed to repeat in our adult life what feels normal or familiar to us. Now, this programming is subconscious, therefore we don't have any control over it. We don't even know it's happening. It's all subconscious. So repetition compulsion is a toxic, sinister, hidden force. But as soon as we are made aware of it, we are able to stop being under the control of this force. Now, after all, if you think about it, how can we stop doing something that is bad for us if we don't even know we are doing it? And if we're doing something that is subconscious, we don't know we're doing that. So if we're under the control of a subconscious force called repetition compulsion, we don't even know we are under the control of this force because it's all subconscious. And how do you change that? It's really simple. We can only stop doing something that is bad for us as soon as we realize we are actually doing this. So as soon as I learned I was under the control of this toxic, sinister, hidden force, I was able to stop it controlling me. Because it wasn't subconscious anymore, it was now in my conscious mind. My life immediately improved. I stopped allowing abuse and toxic situations back into my life. And this is such a better way to live. But sadly, I went through 2 divorces before I learned that I was under the control of this force. Now, having a medical degree didn't help, as I had never heard of repetition compulsion in my training in all my years of studying to be a doctor. But I think as doctors, we should be taught about repetition compulsion, because if you think about it, a lot of people end up going to their doctor because they're suffering from the side effects of abuse. And if they're suffering abuse in their adult lives, you can be pretty sure they had abuse in their childhood, because we repeat in our adult lives what we had in our childhood. So doctors should know about repetition compulsion, because we definitely see patients who are under the control of this toxic, sinister, hidden force. So I'm ending up now. Let's just quickly go back to my divorces. As soon as I learned about repetition compulsion, the toxic, sinister, hidden force, and I know I keep repeating it and that's deliberate, that makes us invite abuse we suffered as children back into our adult lives. As soon as I learned about this force, I stopped blaming myself and I started to understand myself. My divorces weren't a moral failure. They were a psychological pattern. But the sad thing was, it was a long time before I learned about this force. And if I learned it earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had to go through 2 divorces, because that was a really painful 2 episodes. If this resonates with you, you're not alone. I'm here, I'm part of it. So have you made bad choices and bad decisions in your adult life that have led you down the road of having to deal with abuse or toxic situations, just like the ones you experienced as a child? Is this happening to you too? If it is, then maybe you are under the control of this toxic, sinister, hidden force called repetition compulsion. If you've had painful relationships or marriages, please know you're not broken. You're not alone. You may simply be repeating what you were taught in your childhood. And until someone finally explains it, and hopefully this is what I'm doing here, you won't be able to stop it till somebody tells you what you're doing. And hopefully, as I say, that's where I come in. So look, stay with the channel, because my videos are aimed at helping people who had abusive childhoods break free from the toxic, sinister, hidden force called repetition compulsion. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.